We come now to the second part of this video, and we're starting off at a point where we're conveniently cutting some carpet out for a car that we're progressing with, and you can see that we've cut paper cardboard templates out for the various parts of the car, and you can see that we've got special cutouts in the cardboard, and each part is marked. These look like the foot panels. That obviously is the driver's side piece of carpet that goes underneath the driver's seat. These are the tunnel sides that you recognise, and that will have obviously a left and right side, so that will just flip over like that. And you can see that these pieces here, these are the pieces that go underneath the seats. That's got a hole in it for the handbrake, and there'll be other little bits that you'll need for in the luggage compartment, etc, etc. But the main point of showing you this is, of the two pieces of carpet that we've given you, you can see that there is ample carpet. Having said that, if you look closely at the carpet, you will see certain areas where there could be marks where it's been folded, but we give you plenty of carpet, so you can just lay your paper templates out carefully and choose the most suitable parts of the carpet. Obviously don't throw any offcuts away, they'll do to make mats, or they'll do if you need to put any carpet in any other areas. To swap to an entirely different direction now, whilst we're down here on this nice bit of carpet, you recognise this has been the servo that you've been supplied with fitted to your car, and I'm assuming at this stage now you've got your scuttle off to expose this servo, and you'll see that there is 4 exit tubes. There's four exit tubes, 4 exit holes from the servo. These have got yellow bungs in, so in those go the 4 brake pipes, and the ones at the very end of the servo, which are obviously pointing backwards, so the ones at the very back of the car actually go to the 2 front wheels, and then the ones closest to the vessel go to the rear wheels. I don't really think it matters which side they go to, but that's important. And then the main thing is with these unions that you screw on into this master cylinder, they need to be reasonably tight but not over tight, and obviously check them after you've got them in and you've got the fluid in to make sure they don't leak. For the remote reservoir to work, we've given you some copper pipe which you will cut into small pieces about 1.5 inches long. If you do it with a nice tube cutter, then you'll see that it will alleviate the need for you to file them. It gives you a slightly tapered start. All you do is put a little bit of brake fluid on them to lubricate them, and then push them into the 2 rubber seals in the top of that cylinder. So they'll push into there like that, and then that's ready. That's gone in well, and the other one goes in like so. Push them in, and then the next thing is then we can then get this reinforced nylon pipe that goes onto there, push that well into there, like so, a Jubilee clip round it, and then cut the tube to length, and then there is your reservoir that fits in that magic clip onto the other side of the firewall panel underneath the under the bonnet. Pretty straightforward. The red bung in there is the it fits into a rubber seal there. Into that you'll push the servo tube that goes to the offside of the engine. So we're now underneath a partly completed Super Spec, and you can see the rear brake pipes, the copper pipes that go to the wheel cylinders on this disc brake car, and you can see the flexi pipe that comes off that bracket just there that goes to a small L-shaped bracket that we've made the other end of the flexi, that then carries on to one of the pipes that goes forward, the copper pipes that goes forward to the master cylinder. On the disc brake cars, that this is different. There is a flexi pipe that comes from the caliper to the bracket on the rear trailing arms. That is so that you can remove the caliper for fitting pads. You can also see we don't use the hole for the handbrake cable where it went before. We've rerouted the cable so as it goes on top of the wishbone and then along the back of the wishbone like that, and then through the special plate that bolts underneath. We referred to this plate before, and that was a plate that you get in the kit, and if you remember we referred to the fact there was holes underneath it for fixing the seat belts and the seat. So those holes there, you see, they haven't been used yet. Those holes there, they're additional holes that will bolt the plate on. The handbrake cable that we've given you it has got these adjusters on the end, so there is endless amounts of adjustment on the cable. So again, it's slightly different. The ends of the cable are different on the disc brake cars to the drum brake cars, but in any event, that part of the cable does push into the locator on the back plate or on the provision on the trailing arms on the disc brake car. And you'll see that the disc brake car has got a loop on it where that's got a bullet on the end. Probably the most important thing is that when you adjust the handbrake, you have got a lot of adjustment, as these two adjusters will go up and down the cable against that stop. So you see when you've got the stopping position there and that goes in there like that, it's very easy for you to adjust the handbrake up by running those adjusters up and down the cable. At the other end of the cable, where the yoke is for the handbrake, then we've got a special adaptation to the yoke that you'll remember in the kit content, and you'll see it is the standard yoke like that with the hole through it for the pin that goes through your extension rod from your handbrake, but instead of the cable looping through that like that as it does normally, that works as a compensator, so it levels it out. Instead of that, then we'll do each side separately, and what happens is that you'll see there is a hole in that. Can we see that, camera person? That little hole that's been drilled in that 12mm bolt, and simply the end of the cable that we've cut for you goes through that goes through the hole like that in the bolt, and all that happens is that pulls forward like that, then, sorry, that's that way around, that's the driver's side. Then all we do is tighten up, we pull it until it's tight, and then we just tighten that bolt up. And that is a very, very simple method of fixing the handbrake cable. It is self-explanatory and it is quite easy to do. You've just got to make sure that that pulls up tight and nips the cable tight in there. The only downside of it is that those bolts do rub on the floor. So I can't see anything wrong with that, but you may want to put a little piece of plastic or nylon material for those to slide on when you pull it forward, when the handbrake pulls it forward. We'll just look at this from the other angle and you'll be able to see it a little bit clearer, the route of the cable. And we follow the cable through the bolt-on bracket. It then follows, it goes along, and it goes past the bottom of the subframe and then over the top of the wishbone, through the clip, the existing clip on the wishbone, and the little clip on the wishbone clips round the provision on the cable, that serrated fastener, and then you can see it then goes into the back of the backplate. In your kit you've got a small bag of 3 unions. One of the unions threads into the inlet manifold like that, and you'll be given a piece of stiff plastic pipe with an on-return valve that pushes into the back of the servo and through that rubber grommet that's in it, and then you'll have a piece of flexi rubber pipe that will join the two up together like that. That's pretty straightforward. We come to the accelerator cable, which obviously is a rover part, and you'll see that it is the correct length, and the end with the bellows on is straightforward. That goes on to the junction box just there and fits in the drum nipple on the end, fits into the slot nicely, and then you can see that there is endless amounts of adjustment on that adjuster just there. When we come to the other end of it, it's not quite so simple. We do need all the length of the inner cable, so we'll take off and disregard that plastic clip that's on the end. We don't need that plastic clip any longer, and we'll also snip off the nipple that's on the end, so it's a bare end. You'll see that there is a locating clip on this end here, and we really need to cut away the first part of the retaining clip that's got the 2 wings on, so there is just a flush circular fitting just there. So with a junior hacksaw, carefully take that first part of that clip away, remove that so there's a flush fitting, and all that happens is that you just put a slot in the front of that pedal box. We've just gone down it about 1 inch with an angle grinder, and all that's happened is then we've fastened that flush fitting plastic clip onto the front of that box with 2 self-tapping screws, and then the nipple that we've disregarded, the end of the cable goes through the hole in the top of the accelerator pedal, and we put a washer on, put the 10mm nut on, it pulls down, and all that happens, that simply operates the throttle mechanism quite easily and quite simply. You will have to put a spring on there, return spring on that. On a similar note, we do the same with the with the clutch cable, and you'll see that the clutch cable is from a different origin altogether, but it is the correct length, and it has got the fixings on that we want. So with the accelerator, with the clutch cable, you'll see that there is a nipple on this end and a adjusting rod on that end, and we'll see there is a grommet that we can possibly disregard and a nice nylon bush. So having disregarded the grommet, what happens is then that we also cut off the nipple at the end. Can you cut there when I get some milk? Whoa! In my right hand now you see the actual clutch arm that comes out of the side of your MT75 gearbox, and what happens is that with that gaiter and that grommet taken off the cable, and possibly that washer as well, that nylon end goes through the hole that's in your adapter plate, and then the threaded end of this cable goes through the small hole in your clutch arm like that, and then you will need a 6mm or a pair of 6mm nuts on the end there to retain that, and then that gives you a degree of adjustment into your clutch. Remember, there shouldn't be any tension on it whilst the clutch isn't pressed, so that gives you lots and lots of adjustment just there. Obviously you'll put the gaiter back on. When we come to the other end of the cable, then simply with the other end of the cable we just cut off the nipple that's on the end, put the nipple in the vise and the small junior hacksaw and cut that off, and then all that happens is that there is an existing hole in the front of the pedal box, and I do believe that you will have to enlarge it in order to take that the width of that thread. So it's slightly different on this car. This has got a nylon locator. This is a metal one. So all that happens is that that goes through the face of that pedal box, and then, as you've probably noticed, there is an eye in the end of the clutch pedal and a bolt that goes through it. It's the same thing as the accelerator cable, is you just thread the cable through the eye bolt and tighten the eye bolt up tight, and that's pretty straightforward. You'll see that the root of the cable goes along the side of the engine, across the front over the top of the radiator, and then down towards the adapter plate. Obviously the main thing that you've got to watch is that you wind the cable carefully past the exhaust manifold. You just go round that side, you'll see how we've done it. You can hopefully see the nylon shoulder sleeve that goes into the adapter plate. You can see the cable there. It actually does follow quite a natural route, and it does miss the manifold, but an extra clip on it to hold it out that way would be advantageous. Remember that I could see that because of the colour of the manifold that the engine's been run, so be very careful that that you don't put your hand there to do some work and find out that the engine is still hot and that manifold will burn you. So be really careful that when you put your hand there that this isn't red hot. I think we touched on the position of the components before, but we'll just do it again. You can see we've got the coil fastened to the very near side of the car, we've got the expansion bottle next to it, we've got the ECU, and we've still got to get a holder for these relays. These relays are still untidy, So there will be a little holder made for that. And the plug for the ECU, I see they've got it in from the side, that's handy. And then we've got the reservoir there that is only just clear of the top of the bonnet, and it's got that magic little plate that holds it in position. The battery is in front of the expansion tank, and we've made a little clip, a simple Z-shaped clip that bolts down through that tray to hold the battery firmly. The last thing you want is the battery coming adrift. Make sure you run a straight edge down there like that from the side of the scuttle to the nose cone, just to make sure that the battery doesn't encroach on the bonnet. Don't let these stainless poles confuse you today. These are just a support for the display bonnet when we take it to a show. You'll see that we've got fuse holders just here, and these are still hanging loose, but remember that they do all clip together like so, and there is little holes in them, little brackets in them to fasten them down. So you can get those all clipped together, and even if you made a little stanchion for them, be a good idea. Then you could mount them just there on a stanchion. But remember, these fuses, it's always better if you can put them in a place that's easily accessible. Whilst this car is on the button now, and it will start up by just turning the key, the technicians work on it very sensibly, disconnected the earth lead to the battery just whilst we're working on it, so no accidents can happen. So it's a good idea, whilst you're still uncertain of your electrics, that that you disconnect the battery when you're not working on the car, or at least when there's nobody there. Yes. I think it'd be better just here. We come now to the very delicate part of the build, and that is the steering column, the switches, the wheel, and the column cover. Now this is an area that, to be truthful, we're still not 100% happy with, and we feel that we've got to settle for something that may be a little bit of a compromise here to move this project forward. So if you can also look at this in the same light, and try not to be too despondent if you're not reaching perfection. But I do think if you persevere, you will be able to get something that is quite acceptable. As you know, the column originates from a modern production car, and it is fully adjustable up and in and out, and by undoing the clamp at the bottom, up and down as well, like that. So make sure that that does work, and make sure that you try the components on. Then the wheel is probably as far away from you as possible, because that's probably where you'll have it. But on the other hand, make sure that the cables reach and you've got it out as far as you can. So we've got the ignition key switch in, and we've got the turn switch in, and you've got the other plug on the back that picks up the spade connections that go into the back. This is the two-piece carbon fibre cowl, and there is a suggestion just there where you will cut a round hole for that key hole, and then just here there is a little bit of a T thing, and that is where we think you will have to cut a hole for the arms of the switches to go through. The same the other side. and obviously you will have to cut a substantial hole in the front for the steering wheel to go through. That is obviously in two halves like that, like an Easter egg, and it will mean that those holes here will have to be cut downwards so that it will go over the top of the arms. And then finally you'll have to find a method to hold it together. But what I would say is that it is quite tight to the switches and to the column, so it will be self-positioned. So we'll put that to one side for a moment, because that is not the most difficult task. The most difficult tasks are these switches. Remember, when you got the switches, we'd already put the three plug holders into the back, and we'd given you a set of the spade connectors that go with the plugs. You'll notice that there was one plug that didn't have one socket that didn't have a plug to it, and that isn't actually used, or it's not used on this car. So it could have been for the rear screen wipers that this car hasn't got. And you'll see the operation of these switches, normal type car switches. They pull towards you, they twist, and all the operations are marked clearly on the front of the switch. That is the pickup for the horn, if the horn was on the steering wheel. But I don't think we're using the horn on the steering wheel on these switches. I believe the horn is one of these operations, which I'll be able to explain later on. It just escapes me which one it is. So what happens with these switches is we have to try to mount those on that column, which is very, very difficult. So what we really need to do is to cut away part of this plastic casing so that we can get it to saddle over the column. So with an ordinary hacksaw blade with a 32 tooth 10-inch hacksaw blade without the frame, we're going to cut away this plastic casing, and you can see very roughly where I'm marking it with the pen. Is you're going to cut that away through there, take that little clip off through there. So we're going to finish up after we've cut away the excess material. We're going to finish up with that. So that is held together at the top. We've avoided cutting the top away, and it is quite flexible, and that will then sit on there like so. Sits on there like that, and all we do is we just fix that on there permanently with silicone sealer. So the more expensive of the tubes of sealer, that's what we're using to bond that on there. You could mix up some body filler and put it on there with a bed of body filler, and then put a self-tapping screw on there. But that does work quite well. Remember that once that's in position, then you'll start to experiment with the cowl, working out how you're going to cut it and how you're going to get it to fit on. And remember, in any event, it must move through the hole in the dashboard. So before you cover the dashboard, make sure you've worked out that this will either go through the hole, or if you wanted to cheat, you could cut it short so it goes up to the dashboard. But that's the two options that you've got. Remember, throughout the whole of this process, you must try the steering wheel on there. So the steering wheel will go onto there like that, and it will, the minimum it would do would come up to the front of the cowl. back to the query of the horn, on this multifunction switch, then on the wiper side of it, we've got pull towards you is the wash, and then instead of the single wipe, we have the horn which is pushed down. So to operate your horn, it's obviously through one of the relays we've got. You press down and that's your horn. Those of you who are really clever may be able to wire it up through the horn button, but in this instance we're doing it that way. Push down, horn. We're moving on to now some of the finer points of building your super spec, and we're dealing with two items here. One is the luggage compartment cover, which we've touched on before, which is carbon fibre mat laid onto ordinary GRP, and the finisher that you step over to get into the car, which is made from a piece of plastic pipe. To cut the plastic pipe and to trim the luggage compartment, you can choose to use several ways. One is with a fine-tooth jigsaw, or with a mini grinder with a cutting wheel in. Remember, if you're going to use a mini grinder with a cutting wheel in, before you use it, just inspect the wheel to make sure that it hasn't fallen on the floor and a bit hasn't broke off it that's going to fly off and hit you in the eye. Make sure you familiarise yourself with the controls. You will find that the cheaper mini grinders have a difficult switch to operate, and if you've got it tangled in your clothing, you can't switch it off, you'll be in a mess. Make sure that you always wear goggles when you're using any kind of electrical hand tool, drills, grinders, jigsaws, etc. And also you really ought to have earmuffs on as well. I've suggested two methods of cutting this. There are other electrical tools you can use, but those of you who are doing this at home, the operation can be done just as easily with an ordinary hacksaw blade, a 32-tooth hacksaw blade with a bit of masking tape wrapped around the handle. It's a lot slower, but it's more precise, and you don't need to be quite so careful. So to cut this pipe, remember this is a pipe that goes over, you step over to get into it.
How long do we cut that bit?
29 inches, you start it off. So we cut that off like that. That cuts it quite well. And what we need to do, we need to take a piece out of this tube that is approximately 1 inch wide. So we put some masking tape on there like that, along the length of the tube, and we can cut that with the mini grinder, like so. Which is very quick, but a little bit dangerous. If you're not used to using these machines, then I would really tell you to be very careful. I ought to really tell you to wear gloves, but I think gloves could lure you into a sense of security that isn't real. That could whiz through the gloves quite easy. So the other method that's a little bit more leisurely is the jigsaw with a fine tooth blade in. Again, you've still got to be quite careful with this, but you can see that you can go along there like that. Quite successfully, and you can cut that waste material away like that. We've got one here which we did earlier, which I can show you, and that is what we're aiming for. And this will snap over the body side. Both the ends need to be trimmed so that they fit neatly into the little spaces at the end where it touches on the elbow panel and at the front where it meets the scuttle. Obviously this is covered in grey leather cloth before it's put on finally. We'll go to the finished car soon and show you this in its completed form. Whilst we've had the success with the two machines, then we'll carry on with this luggage compartment cover. If we look at it closely, we can see that already that we've marked it. It is already marked where you're going to cut it. And to be quite truthful, if you just use a hacksaw blade to cut that by hand, it will take you about 5 minutes to cut, and you're sure that you're not going to make any mistakes. But again, we're a little bit pushed for time, so we'll pop the goggles on and we'll try it with the jigsaw first, see how we go with the jigsaw. So we put the jigsaw on. It's very delicate, this, so you've got to be careful that you don't fracture it. Are you still photographing this?
I am.
There we are, that was a lot more successful than what I anticipated. But having said that, you've got to be very careful, because I've already told you that you cannot get bad scratch marks out of this. So I know that that will actually polish out, we're not too worried about that. But if you do scratch it, then you've lost it. Anything like the corner there, you need to trim that off.
Does the camera wearer get goggles?
Well, we ought to. Try not to jigger these up whilst you fit them, because I can't get any single items. I can only get complete sets from our supplier, and they're always behind with the supply of these, so we've never got them in stock, so be really careful. So that's the main edges cut off. What we need to do is to go to the car now and offer this up and see how it's going to go on the car, because we do need to just clean these circles out here, but we don't want to take any off in case we haven't got enough. We come now to offer this up to the car, and I do remember we did try this on before and it did go on easily. So you can see that we're looking to cover up the area at the side. This isn't a particularly good fitting back panel, we've got a delicate bit just there, so we need to put that on there like that, slip it through there, and we can see fortunately that that amount of material that we've left easily covers up that little bit delicate bit just there. So there's no problem at all with that. We push it forward and we can see that that's going to be held on nicely. We're not going to trim any off these bits here at all. We're just going to put the snap-on finisher on there. But looking at it, I can see that we could really do with trimming off up to the natural line that there is there. There is a natural line there. We will trim off there with a round file. We'll get Paul to file that after lunch with a round file up to that mark. And we see the mark that's come out the mould, right up to there is perfect. And probably the same round the back. We'll do the same with that. So when we do put the snap-on finisher on, there'll just be room. we'll at this stage get some masking tape and we'll spy along the back of the front of the bar that fastens to the seats, like that. We'll put the tape up against the roll bar and like that. We'll mark that off there because we'll know that we'll cut that piece off there like that, so that that sticks out the right amount. So that wants to be trimmed off there. We also note that this encroaches down there by 3 inches. So when we come to put the side rails on, then we've got to make the decision, do we cut that off there or do we cut that off there? So we haven't quite decided on that yet. I'll just have to think about that, decide what would be the best to do. So we'll take this off and we'll try to fit this. If you look at these, you can see that they are handed, and it is the straight edges where my 2 forefingers are, which are the front. It's pretty obvious because the back isn't slightly curved. So the front is straight, and we can also see that again there's this suggested scribe mark on there that we need to trim off. And we also note that that end a bit ragged, so we'll probably start off with trimming that end off square if we can afford to, and I think we can. So we can see that there's enough material there to trim off. So I'll just get the mini grinder and trim that little bit off there. So we now start off by trimming off that ragged end. And by taking off the excess material on the inside. So we said that the side with a wobbly side was the inside, and again we've conveniently marked it for you. With this type of operation, try not to involve a third party to hold it for you while you're cutting. While you're operating any kind of machine, it's always better if there's only you doing it. And you've only got your fingers to think about, not somebody else's. So we've cut that material off the inside, and we're now looking to make a mind up where we're going to trim this. So I think we'll start off by putting this item on the car if we can, and then we'll decide how well it fits. So we can see that it looks like it's going to fit quite well. It's going to spring over there. So we'll go on and we'll trim more material again off the front where that line is like that. If we're a little bit worried about scratching the carbon fibre, then we could attempt to put some masking tape on it to protect it. So we'll just try it just there like that, put the masking tape on, and just to see if that's going to help it a little bit and not scratch it with the bottom of the jigsaw. Because as I've already said, you can rectify the damage on ordinary GRP, but it's a bit more difficult on this material. Again with the goggles on, and again holding it in a hand, or you might try supporting it on a bench. A fine blade is important, and practice with the jigsaw is also important. So off we go again. Whoops. That jumped away then, so got to be really careful. Remember, you may choose to cut further away from the line and then sand the remainder off. That's good. I'm sure that that masking tape was beneficial and not scratching it. So we're now starting to look like it's going to fit, and it is a little bit tight to go on, but we can see that we need now to take off a little bit at the bottom there. Can we come around here, camera person? And we need to see that we need to take a bite out of the carbon fibre just there, and we're going to have to guess at it at this stage actually, just take a little bit out at a time, but something like that we think, in order for it to go down and sit round the side. We can take the big chunk out like that, but we really do need to take any more than that out with carefully with a ram file. Now, to be honest with you, that's looking really good, but it hasn't gone over the actual back lip, because the back lip is just a little bit too wide. Now I'm happy that we may be able to spring it on, but I'm going to cheat and snip a little bit off that back edge now, because for this video we won't be able to take it on and off easily, so it's just a bit too tight, it isn't fitting on, so I'm going to whiz down that back edge there with the snips and just snip a little bit off. It's in the way. We are restricted because the seat's in the way, so you can see that I've got these left-hand gilbows and I'm starting from the middle and I'm taking 1/8 of an inch off there like that. Now these little slivers that you cut off, just make sure you throw them away straight away, because it's the kind of thing that if you've got small children or pets around, that they could dig in the foot. So we're snipping that little bit off just there, right, with the left hands, and then we're going in the other direction with the right hands. That's why you're going to get your wife to treat you, that you're really going to ask her for not just one pair but both pairs. So you can see how handy these are and how easy it makes to cut this stainless steel. So we snip that off like that, and remember we're going to put those two bits away, throw them away, put them in the dustbin, and now we'll find that this bit goes on a lot easier now, particularly for this video. So that goes on there, it's dead easy now. So that goes on there like that, and eventually we'll put 2 small screws in there to hold it. So again, we've got to decide whether we're going to cut the bit off that or cut it off the other thing. So we put this back on again like that, offer it up on top, and what would you do, Gina? Well, I think what we'll do, we'll keep our options open. We won't cut it off either. So what we'll do is we'll trim off the excess on the we'll trim off the excess that we've got just here across a line like that. Get the masking tape. See the masking tape?
Yeah, it's underneath on the boot, on
It's
the
here,
tank.
yeah. So what we'll do now, we'll get that, we'll push it up like that so it's on the square, and we'll cut that off across there like that, and we'll continue that line up like that, and we'll trim that off like that. Okay, so we'll just whiz that off now while the camera's still on us. So I'm going to trim this material off here. Now remember, when you do what I've done, mark things off, don't go and cut on the wrong side of the tape. So that's the material that we're cutting off. We're cutting that off and leaving the tape intact. If we move the camera down here, then before we commit ourselves heavily to this cutting procedure, now just before we commit ourselves to cut this, because even we don't get 2 goes at this, this is the only set of carbon fibre I've got for another fortnight yet. So we're looking at this and think, just before we cut that, we're doing the right thing. And we're not exactly, because as we look down here, that little bite we took out of there quite successfully at the first attempt, it's not quite right because we've got an untidy edge just there. So what we really need to do, we need to bring this lower section here further down so it comes and finishes naturally with the seam that's in that that crescent panel. So what we really need to do is to alter that and to cut more out of that, like so, so that that comes down further and meets that. And therefore, if we'd cut that, then we would have burnt our boats. So that means with it overlapping it like that, then it gives us 2 chances at it. So just keep the camera on this, because I know it's a bit lengthy and you're all yawning at home, but I'm sure this is worthwhile. In this case, we're going to use a mini grinder for speed, and I'll just repeat, if you're not used to using these, be really careful. I've already suggested that possibly we ought to be wearing ear muffs. That's a good suggestion, but the other suggestion is that with the dust, we definitely ought to be wearing a mask, a dust mask. Didn't we, camera person?
Definitely.
Also, it covers the whole of your workshop in dust. So, although it's quick, do it outside and do wear one of those filters. I'm laying this on the floor like that. If I was stupid, I'd step back on it. So don't make all these mistakes. So we're looking at that, and that's the area we're going to take off that now. Trim a little bit more out of that and see if we can get it to sit down further and sit down better. But all the while we really need to keep our options open in case we make a mistake. Remember, experience is one's best teacher, but the school fees are high. Are you still on?
Yeah.
Right, we get the goggles on again. Go back to the good old Bosch jigsaw with a red fine-tooth blade. We're cutting that bit out. can you let me have that nice new half-round file, please, that you're hiding in your toolbox? Oh, that's a cracking. That's great. So that's a lot better, eh? So we're nearly there. We're just another 1/8 of an inch down there, and that'll be perfect. But for this video, we're going to stop at that. So we've got that down there. Doesn't that look good to camera person, right? So we get that bit on there. We're putting the cover on top again. We're nearly done this now. Right, so we can see that. We're pressing that down. We've got that like that. So we could do with fixing screw probably in there that will go through the two, pick up the material underneath, or we could glue them on. That would be probably even better. So that's looking quite good there. But I need you now to come square on like that, please. So this is the critical finishing off now. As we look at the side, that this carbon fibre will be silhouetted against the stainless steel, and it's important that it looks a nice crisp clean line. And you can see that a little bit like a threatening bit just there where it's not quite right, and that area there is ragged. So what's going to happen now is that what I suggest we do is that we know that the area underneath there, we can put a screw in there to hold that down. So for this instance, I'll just put a little bit of tape on there. But we know that we can get a screw in that, just there, to hold that down. So I'll put some tape on, like that. And we'll pull it that way so it grips well. So we put the cover back on, like so, and using tape again, we're going to pull that in position. Like that. And we need now to get a nice flowing line around there. So with masking tape, that's exactly 22 inches, 22mm wide. We're putting the masking tape on the apex of the corner of the first and second component, like so. Can you see where we're coming from, camera person? Yeah. We've got a nice straight line there on the corner, and we've got the two tied in together, and we can see exactly how much we need to trim off the carbon fibre for it to look absolutely spiffing. Nice and clean and nice and straight and tidy. So we're going to leave that now, because I shall get one of our small boys we've got here to get some coarse sandpaper and the file, and to trim that off so it's nice and straight. Remembering that we've only got a little bit here before we encroach on that area that's not correct, but I can see that little bit we're taking off. So we've got the tape on the corner on both pieces are flush just there. We'll just sand that off so it's spot on. Is he in?
Is he in?
Inside the workshop?
No.
Okay, the camera person here has just thinks that everyone out there is stupid, and she's just pointed out that I haven't made it very clear. Remember that we are going to take these bits off to sand them, and remember that this bit looks a bit rough here, this bit just here. There's another layer of the stuff underneath. So what we're saying is that we'll have to also sand the piece that's underneath there as well. So there's two layers. So obviously you've got to move the tape and take it off the other material as well. And then you may need a small screw that goes in there to pull those two together. But anything like these small screws that I'm referring to, don't put in yet, because when you come to fit your hood, you're going to want fixing screws for your hood. So it may be that the fixing screws for your hood will conveniently go around this carbon fibre cover, and it could look absolutely great. The lifter dots for the hood and the fixing screws for this will all be together. The other thing is that what we haven't touched on yet is the hood frame, and you'll see when we lift this off that there is a suggestion, a little slit just there for the hood frame bracket to go to. So before you get too deep into this, we've also got to talk about the hood frame, which we will do soon. But anyway, what will happen now is we'll get someone to trim this up to make a smashing job of it, and then we'll see it when it's finished. Don't go away. We'll also show you a finished cockpit head finisher, so you can see how that goes on. But very roughly, I think there is one that's complete. I'll just snap it on for you and show you. So that is the, just hang on. That is a cockpit side finisher that's been made for this side. That's had the piece cut out of it, and it's been shaped at both ends so it fits around the scuttle and around the back. The trouble is that Paul's done this, and it's all wobbly down there. So when you do get it covered in leather cloth, you put it on, silhouetted against the stainless, it will look absolutely rubbish. But we've got to make allowances for Paul because he's from Worksop up the road. So what will Shardbrook, I'm sorry Paul, that's worse. So with a little bit of sandpaper and a block, we'll go down there and we'll rub that like that all the way along there to get it nice and straight. Paul will do this in a minute. So that snaps on there, and it really does hide a multitude of sins, and it can make something that looks a bit horrid quite good. So just a screwdriver out of there, Paul, please. That's good. Paul breaks up tomorrow for his holidays, and he's so that goes on there, and he's a bit excited. So that snaps on there, and that. To continue with the rear end of the car, this is a component that you received, and this goes on the top of the bar that picks up the seat belts like that. You'll fix it with a couple of self-tapping screws, because it's onto that the rest of the lid for the luggage compartment will hinge. We'll just go on to those components now, and I'll just show you how you assemble those components. The lid consists of the main part just there, two side bits and two back bits, and obviously a piece of material that you need to cover the lid with. The fabric side is supposed to be the top. Now, what happens is that those are the sides, and I do believe that these are intended to be shiny, and you will need to remove the plastic coating from them. I recommend that you do this as what I would call a dry run first, that is without the leather cloth on, without the hood material on, but in any event you would just glue the hood material onto that face there, onto the top face, fold it round underneath. After that's on, then these components go on the side like that. I won't push it all the way on, but they go on the side like that. Obviously right up to the end, I could just deburr these to make them go on easier. So they go on to the end like that. Obviously when you've got the hood material on there, that does trap it underneath like so. So we put both these two components on, and you'll note there's a little tag been pre-bent on there, quite clever really. So those tags go to the front like so. I won't snap them right on because we won't get them off again. So they go on like that. The next thing is those two components. One is already got a 90-degree fold on, and again that goes down there on that side to trap the hood material. You'll notice that these two go together like that, and you'll notice that the smaller piece that's got the return in it, the holes that are pierced in it, are slightly larger than the one without the fold on. So the idea is that you get shiny material front and rear, and when you look through the front holes, then it is truly visible right the way through. It's a good idea to spend a little time with your half-round file and deburr these holes, and I think I'd be pretty safe to say that you could glue the two halves together with the exception of the very end. So you could glue the two halves together, put a couple of blocks of wood and a couple of G-cramps on it and clamp it up together. What happens then is, providing that you haven't glued the ends, that slides over the top there like so and forms three sides of the box. Then we've given you sufficient snap-on edge to go over round that round corner, round there, and obviously across the front to cap those two that are together. And it looks like you'll need a small pot rivet or a small nut and bolt through that little tag there and through those to fasten the whole lot together. It's probably a tight fit, but you may need some silicone sealer or glue to fix it all tight. And then obviously all that happens is then, after all that's together like that, then that's fastened on to the member that goes behind the seat with the hinges that we've supplied. Now we'll just go through and look at the car we've got in the showroom that's complete, and you'll be able to see the operation a little bit more clearly. So let's go back down here. Let's start off here. Okay, looking at this real car, you can see how much better that would have looked if we'd extended that down, as you're going to do on your car. So that would have looked a lot better if we hadn't got that little gap just there. So you can see we've got a couple of fixing screws, one at the bottom there and one just there, and we've got some snap-on edge around there to finish it off around the roll bar.
That side cap.
You can see the side finisher there that we've covered in grey leather cloth, and we've got some snap-on edge on the end of the edge of the dashboard, and it's come down there, and we've a little bit of silicone sealer just there, and squared it off so it looks neat. So that is the completed lid. You can see that we put a Robin Hood badge on the back there. We've got the snap-on edge finisher there. It doesn't look as if we've got a fixing in there, but we have got the telltale silicone sealer fixing it together, and you can see we've got 3 pot rivets, 1, 2, 3, that's pot riveted the bottom together, and then the other length of carbon fibre material we haven't touched on yet actually goes across the back, again all in line, fixed on with 2 screws that cover up the seams just there, you notice in it, and then the lid, when you fit the lid, it nicely just misses the edge of that, and it sits, the lid actually sits on about 3/4 of an inch of the edge of this cover. So you can see that it all works quite well, looks quite neat. The material is on the top of the stainless steel. You may need a stop to stop it going down too far, so that it's not resting only on that fiberglass, particularly if you're going to start putting cases of beer on the back or anything like that, any great weight. Remember that in the kit we've given you the residue of that lock set, so we haven't managed to do it yet, but I'm sure you will try to get a couple of those locks in there so you can make it a locking compartment. You'll see that we've got a fixing screw there and a fixing screw there, but the seat belt fixings go through there anyway and trap all that down. So it all looks quite neat, and it has been an area of the car that's been much admired, and lots of people with the bog standard subcase and 2Bs have tried to buy these components from us to enhance their cars. You can see that the steering column cowl that we referred to earlier on, this is a prototype cover, and it is the same as what you've got, and we have struggled a little bit to fit it, but you can see exactly what we're trying to do with it, and you can see the hole we've cut there for the key just there, and you can see the slot we've cut in there to take the actual wiper. So hopefully you'll get yours as good, if not better than that, but it is a tricky area, and don't be too disappointed if it doesn't turn out absolutely as you'd want it. We better zoom in on it. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, are you ready? We now can see the exhaust system, and the next practical operation we're going to tackle is the heat protector that goes on the exhaust. Now you can see that it's made up of 2 main components, the end, the bowl end cap, and the main louvered component that covers up both the catalytic converter and the silencer, and we've used the chrome plastic edge trim around the front and the back to finish it off. You've been given that in the kit. It does take a little bit of forming, and you could find it a little bit difficult, but we'll go over it in a few minutes, and hopefully we'll be able to explain how to do it. We come now to the heat protector in the form that you'll actually get it. It's in flat form like that, and there's the end cap like that. You'll probably find on yours you've also got a little square cutout in it just there. That's remove that material. That's so you can slide it over the fixing nut for the lambda sensor on the front pipe. Anyway, that's the exhaust protector, and we've got to form it into a circle, and possibly a little bit difficult to do, but just be careful, because whereas the rest of the Super Spec is made from 0.7 material, this is made from 0.5, so it tends to be very sharp. So you can see that I'm holding it on the folded edge like that, and I'm curving it into a cylinder or a tapered cylinder, and I'm being careful not to cut myself on that edge. I would advise that if you've got tender hands and they perhaps haven't had as much hard work as mine, that you may be better to wear gloves so that you don't cut yourself, or even better still, put some masking tape or some edge finisher on the edge so that it doesn't cut you. And we're trying to make it cylindrical, but at the same time we're trying not to make it like a threepenny bit. So it's just really a matter of just very gently, as I'm doing now, just forming it a little bit at a time. Try not to get any sharp curves in it. So where the louvers are tends to be a weak point, and that's where it starts to get angular corners. But you can probably see what I'm trying to achieve. So once we've got it into a C shape like that, then we're in a position then to kind of start to offer it up onto the silencer. So you can see that it's going to come like that into a cylinder like that, and we can offer it up onto the silencer. But remember that in actual fact it is going around this end. So we can start off by trying it, putting that in the end like that, and we can see that yes, that's going to go round there, something in that form like that. So round there, that end, we see that around there, and the other end is going to be the same as the diameter of the silencer. So we come along to the car again, and that will go over that like that, and then we'll obviously dismantle the system, and we'll slide the end cap over that end there. Take those nuts off, obviously. You'll have to take the lander centre out as well. Slide it over the end, and then we'll be looking to form that around the silencer and catalytic converter like that. Obviously you'll be drilling half a dozen holes in the bottom in the two return flanges exactly opposite each other, and you're rotating that so that you don't see it, and putting the fixings to the inside like that. And it will finish up looking quite neat. You can see it's going around the end of the silencer, that end. It will look quite neat, and as I can see it, it'll be a bit of a compromise really. A bit of a compromise to cover up what isn't a very pleasant looking silencer and catalytic converter. And obviously it'll give you the protection that you need as your passenger needs as you step in, because that and the front pipe does get quite hot. Good old Susie, that's okay, Zeus. Right, thank you very much, that's it. Off you get. There you are. Come on. As I said earlier, there is plastic snap-on trim that goes on both ends of that to finish it off. The same material as we've already put on the edges, the front and the rear edges of the bonnet. This is the panel that goes around your gear stick, and it's got a fancy pattern cut into it for a reason. What we need to do is to bend these tags upwards like this. We'll do it with these pliers. We need to bend the tags upwards like that, all the way around, like so. And then once we've bent them exactly at 90 degrees, we need to turn the tops over like that. Pretty straightforward, nothing dramatic. Turn the tops over like that. And basically all that happens is that you noticed in the kit you got that rather pleasant pedal set, gear knob set, leather gaiter set, and that gear lever gaiter is actually elasticated, so that we measured this precisely so that the elasticated bottom of the gaiter will spring over these legs on this particular cover, and it'll fit on without any problem whatsoever. So that's what you're going to do. We'll just look at it in the car now. That's it in the car, and it's on bent form, but what will actually happen is that you see you've got your two legs here on the bottom of the dashboard that you will actually drill through and put a self-tapping screw into the two tubes that form the top tunnel tubes. Once you've pushed that dashboard in as far as it'll go, or in where you want it, remember it is at an angle, so you've got, as it's in there, you will then draw along. You'll put the tunnel top in first like that, and then you'll draw along that front face of the dashboard just like that, because then we'll remove this and we'll mark an inch. We'll extend that line like that and like that, and we'll mark that, and it precisely an inch past there, and we'll cut that off, and then we'll bend that up at just under 90, so that when we do put it back there, when it's covered with leather cloth, it butts up nicely to the front of that dashboard on the car, and it will hide these fixing screws, and it'll finish off looking quite neat. In the kit you got a pair of small car heaters that we're using as demisters that go through these slots, and you'll see that the vent on the heater the exit from the heater will actually protrude through the specially cut slots. However, there isn't an awful lot of provision for these to be held in place, so the one on the driver's side does rest quite neatly on top of the steering column, but on the passenger side you will need to support it by fixing a bracket off the bulkhead and off the side of the car to support the heater. You'll see that we have given you some flat strip and some tube. On the other car we just cut the tube to length and squashed the ends of the tube and cranked them at an angle, and that went underneath to support the heater. It trapped itself in through the holes at the top, and we just supported it with that tube, and we did supplement it with some silicone sealer. But obviously you've got to be a little bit careful with silicone sealer, because if the heater case does get hot, then it could destroy the properties of the sealer, so you may need something a little bit better than that. In any event, remember these heaters aren't intended for use constantly, they're only intended for use just to demist the screen in the case of when you first get in the car. You will find there's quite a lot of heat percolates up anyway around the dashboard area to keep the screen free. In the tank that aren't covered, there's a small one here with about an 1/8 diameter, and there's one at the back. You will need to vent those tubes to the outside of the car so that they do allow the tank to fill properly. So we've got to be very careful where we vent that tube, because once the hood's on you can get fumes inside the car. So it is suggested possibly that you do take it from the back of the tank down underneath the back panel and vent it somewhere inside the spare wheel, obviously above the level of the top of the tank, so that can, when you fill the tank up with fuel, allow the air to escape. Just take this opportunity again to remind you about safety while you're working on your car. Make sure you're wearing goggles, ear muffs, mask if you're doing dusty things. Be careful that you don't drill into yourself, or if you're using a craft knife, that you don't point it towards yourself and cut yourself. Just be really, really careful. And it's time to building these Robin Hoods, people do tend to lack a little bit of self-preservation.
Again, be careful when you're underneath the car that it's on axle stands, and try not to work alone. Make sure there's somebody always keeping their eye on you. If you do get people to help you, watch out they're not over zealous and don't do things that could endanger you. If you're using the glues that we've given you, or you're using other kind of glues, be careful not to breathe the vapour in, and remember that they do seriously give off a very heavy inflammable vapour as well. So be careful when you grind in that you won't left the tin off the tin of paint or off the glue, that you're not going to get a spot on the grinder into the glue and off it goes whoosh. Briefly on fuel, be careful with the petrol that you don't leave gallons of petrol lying around, and be careful that when you first try to start the car up that you're not left the ignition switched on and it's pumping petrol out of the tank and into the engine bay and onto the floor possibly. And then again, if you've got a pit, be careful you don't get petrol fumes down the pit. Battery, that you do need to be able to take the battery lid off quickly. Possibly a battery isolation switch is a good idea. And when things go wrong, don't make the mistake of grabbing hold of the wires that are obviously red hot and burn yourself on them. Be careful if you're wearing a watch with a metal strap, that it could short against the positive lead and the car, and it could melt itself onto your wrists. Don't wear these necklaces or any kind of jewellery while you're working on the car. I'm anxious to get this video completed, to get it to the people that are waiting for it, and it isn't my intention to dwell on a lot of the minor points of building this car. Bleeding the brakes is always a difficult job, particularly for inexperienced, but with everything being new on here, you do stand a chance to do it successfully without too much pain. It's a good idea to read up on bleeding the brakes, so virtually every Haynes manual does have a section on that. So again, you've got to watch so you're not sucking air in anywhere, that all the unions are tight. That's a secret. And if you really do get a problem bleeding the brakes, you can isolate each part of the 4 parts of the system to see which part is obviously causing the problem. And the same with all your cables and pipes. If you just use your common sense to get them in an area that's out of the way and won't cause a problem, you need to do that really as neat as possible, with most of the pipes going down this centre tunnel. The gear kit, which consists of a hood with welded seams and welded windows, and a pair of detachable side screens, a 2-piece hood frame, a couple of straps, a fastener pack, and there is also a couple of fixing brackets cut. You stopping?
Right.
And a pair of fixing brackets. It all comes together in a strong black plastic bag that you can retain and put in the back of the car when the hood's not in use. Now we move on to a car that's got the hood frame already on it. And you can see that could you bring me a bracket, Carl, please? That the hood frame sits on the back of the car and it follows the contour of the car. The fixing bracket goes just here, like that. The person that's fitted these brackets have chosen to crank them. There's no need for that. The bracket goes straight on there. And then there's a simple roofing bolt goes through the longest part of the frame, and then another one through the short frame. The frame then comes up like that and goes forward like so. The straps that are supplied in the kit go on there, and they restrict the movement of the hood frame. So that is a hood frame erected like that. So that now, we really, when we're doing this, we start off with the middle stud. So you'll put the middle stud in like that, and then you've really got to just project over and make sure that you get all of these in like this, and they're all level. So you're going to start off by putting the hood on the front of there. When you put these fasteners in, you'll see they're a 3-part fastener. They are a quality fastener. They've got better recently. They've come from a different source now. You'll see how they go. You need to bifurcate them over to fasten the 2 parts together. With that on there like that, we're now going to lay the hood over the roll bar like that. Some horizontal lines on the back of the car to work to. So we'll just put that there like that. We're just assuming that that's a horizontal line there, which is not far. Now the next thing you do is you do erect the frame. So we've got the frame already, and we bring the frame up like that. Bring the small hoop backward car. Okay, and that goes like that. So we're now going to bring the hood over there. So it's on there like that. Now, what happens now is, you do need help, cut that like this, you do need help, and you've got to pray that you're doing this in warm weather and not when it's frosty and horrible. So you must ignore all these fasteners on here, pretend they're not there. So you've got the hood and you see it's come down past there like that, which is quite good. And you can see that you've got the hood frame tucked into the corner where that sewn seam is, which is also good. And ignore these fasteners, they're not there yet. So back to being in frosty and horrible, if it is hot cold, then it's very difficult for you to fit this hood because the vinyl or the material is quite stiff. So you do need to be in a warm garage and, if necessary, put a blow heater inside the car. So the next thing is, you want to pull the hood tight. So you need to make a note of that seam there, make a note of the seam there, and measure it from the side of the body so you've got the hood in the middle of the body, right? So assuming you've got it in square, you then need the sticky tape like that, and you need to be putting that on there and pulling it as tight as you can, like that. But remember, this is the reason we put that sticky tape line on the car, so that well, you're going to put it down square. So you're using that as a bit of a datum line. You're using that as a datum line. You stick the tape down, Carl. Go on, down you go. Okay. We'll come back to this side again. And we're pulling that down tight. Now, I'm only doing this once because time isn't with us today. Carl's got a hot date tonight, and I've got to edit this video. So we've now had one bite at that, and that's quite good. You can see that it must be quite square because the bars from the roll bar are nicely on the inside of the window, and we've pulled it down as much as we can. And what would happen is that we'd have another go at this. We'd pull this down another ½ inch. And then when we're satisfied that it was down as far as we can, and the hood was quite tight like that, we would then supplement these with more bits of sticky tape, and we'd make sure that that was level. It's moved up from that side, it's not level now. We'd make sure that was level, and then we'd mark out, we'd space these out evenly. They look like they're about 6 inches apart. We'd space those out evenly so they're the same all the way around. We'd mark it with a little pen. It looks like we've got about 3/4 of an inch. Then we'd have a drill and some ordinary panhead self-tappers, and we drill through the hood and through the body and put that panhead self-tapper in. So that they would go all the way around. We'd move away all around the body like that, and then you would systematically take them all out, put the hood on the set table, and fasten these fasteners on. And then with the fasteners on, we then fasten the we fasten the female fasteners on, and then we'd put the male ones on the body. So that's basically how you'd fit the hood. There is more work to it than that, but that is basically it. So, a nice side screen. We've got buyback windows in that are welded. There is a metal frame inside them, so it's possible to tweak the metal frame to get it to fit your car nicely. It's got Velcro fastened to it so that it helps you to keep the drafts out. And there is a set of lift-off hinges supplied in your kit. Now be very, very careful, because they're a bit confusing, these hinges, because there is 8 parts to them, and each part is, half the parts are different, so there's 4 different lots of parts in. So basically, look at them and decide how it works. Look carefully at the way we fitted them. So we fitted the hinge to the top of the pillar, okay? And the other hinge is an inch from the bottom of the pillar, from that corner. So they go onto there, exactly butting up to the outside of the pillar, and then the corresponding parts are pop riveted or fastened on with small nuts and bolts onto the frame of the screen. Okay, you must feel the frame to make sure you know where the frame is. In your own mind, establish how wide the frame is, what you can drill, and then basically that just fastens on there like that. That fastens on there like that, goes in there, and then it tucks in behind the pillar so that there isn't any drafts that go down there. And we've just tweaked that a bit already, just so it goes around that corner, and you can see that it fits quite well like that. The Velcro holds it at the top, and there is some straps you put to the inside to pull it in, to fasten it from the inside. So that's it on. There's a gutter there that does give you a little bit of protection from the rain. So that gutter's like that. That catches a bit of water, and it stops it running inside the body. So it is quite a good fitting hood. We're pleased with it. It's the best one we've had yet, and I'm sure that you'll be happy with it as well.
We come now to go over in detail the covering of the dashboard in leather cloth. We've already sealed the corners like we've done there, and we've pre-fitted the instruments to see how they fit. They're okay, and we've made sure there's no weld splatter or anything on the face of the dashboard that will show up through the leather cloth. We've pop riveted some little bits in the corner of that dashboard just to stiffen it up a little bit, to make it a bit more solid. We're following instruction on the glue, but what I would say about the glue is, the glue you've got in the kit, it isn't the best quality glue, and it may be better if you used something like Evo Stick that's got a lot more strength, because you don't want an area that's important like the dashboard for it to peel off in the heat of the summer. So we've got the leather cloth that we've cut to the approximate size of the dashboard. It's nice leather cloth. It's what's known as burnt grey, I think it's called. So we're following the instructions on the glue, and we're putting an even coat of glue on the dashboard like that. Making sure we get the underneath edge as well, like so. And we're going underneath that edge around there, the important bit where it goes underneath there. Right, so we've done that, and we're going over this. That's a bit wasteful. We will do the whole of this to make sure that we don't miss anywhere. We could have put this on first, drawn around it, and put the glue only on the bit that was going to stick, but because money's no object on this video, we're going to spray all of that with the glue. And I think the instructions were wait 30 seconds. It's not a very warm day today, so we will wait those 30 seconds. Perhaps you should be wearing a mask when you're doing this spraying. You don't want to be breathing this in or
doing it in a well ventilated area. Remember also that this has given off a heavy inflammable vapour, so don't be smoking while you're doing it, and keep people away with boxes of matches. And just be a bit careful. If any of you are working by candlelight in your garage, keep the candle away from it. So that looks like the 30 seconds is almost up. I'll get Walter just to hold that like that for a second. You just hold that like that, Walter, while I decide how we're going to go about this. So this should be going tacky, and it is actually, you can feel it going tacky, so it's pretty fast drying, this stuff. So that looks about right to me. So we've got that like that, we've got the straight edge to the top, and on we go like that. We'll bite the bullet and lay it on there, and then we're going to press it down like that, well into the corner, and we try not to get any puckers in it. Like that, in we go, right into the corner like that, pushing it up there with the finger, right in and all the way around. And we'll stick that over the top like that, because what will actually happen, I could do it straight away actually. You could snap the plastic edge, the snap-on edge trim onto the edge of this, but we won't. We'll just make sure that's pushed well up into there like that, and then we'll have to slit the corners like that. Don't go too far, an inch from the corner, and that can go round there. If I go a little bit more right round there, that will go round there like that. The same with this corner just here. That's somebody ringing on the technical line. I'm afraid they'll have to wait. There's somebody possibly who haven't watched the video properly. Could be. So that's pretty good. We can feel just there that there's the cutout for the steering column. So we've cut that like that. We can also feel, you can just see if we press where the holes are for the instruments. There they are just there, the little round ones. Now what happens now, we must get all the, now just here you can see you can see an unevenness just there, some lumps of sealer that's sticking out there that's annoying me. There's nothing we do about that, we'll have to leave that. That's, if we'd known it was as bad as that, we'd have trimmed that, got those lumps off that, so that's not very good. We must get right up into the corners and press that well in as we're doing now. In these corners here, to make it easier, I'm just going to slit the vinyl. Watch you don't cut yourself, like that. Slit the vinyl like that in order to get it to sit into the corners better. Now, I think what I'll do so it makes it easier, I'll trim off this excess at the top here, so it's not dangling in us. So what happens now is that we're going to cut the middle out of these circles, and the secret is that we're going to cut it like a star. but we're not going to go right up to the metal. We're going to stop about 1/8 of an inch before we get to the metal, because that means that then we can bend it around the corner and we won't see the cut. The vinyl is forgiving enough for that to do that. So we're cutting that, we're stopping 1/8 of an inch before the corner, like so. Just be careful of using these craft knives because they are really sharp, a bit like a scalpel. You could easily do yourself quite a mischief. So with those like that, obviously you can see where we're coming from. They'll tuck underneath like that all the way around to make the circle as nice and round as possible. These are easy, these big holes. It's when you come to the little ones that are tricky. There's the long one just there, and again we're cutting that right in the middle of the long hole. We're finding the corners and we're stopping 1/8 of an inch from the corners again, just the same. And that'll be folded underneath and we'll glue it from behind. We've now got the holes cut in here and we've glued the little tails from behind. And just before we turn it over, I'll just show you the speedo again. So towards the end of this video, there's lots of little bits and pieces that I've really got to tell you, and you'll notice that in the package you collected from us there was an offcut or some pieces of stainless sheet. There is a few areas behind the seats that you'll need to cut small panels for and fasten them in self-tapping screws and then seal them up with silicone sealer, particularly at the edge of the fuel tank to the side panel. Nothing structural, just something to stop the mud splashing up and to stop your contents of your compartment falling out. Also you'll need to cut another template and put in a piece of that carpet. You can use a heat gun to form it to make it a bit more synthetic to the shape of the awkward shape of the boot. On the subject of the carpet, when we showed you the various templates laid out, we didn't actually say that you needed to cut 2 rectangles out that go on the inside of the side panels. So they're quite important. They go in between the side panel, the inside of the side panel and the tubes. It may be a good idea that you familiarise yourself with the construction of this vehicle, and before you go too far on with it, you do actually take all the panels off that we've actually put on, because we've only put them on with a limited amount of self-tapping screws, and that if in the future, in years to come, if you find that you've had an accident in the car and you've got to replace one of the panels, then when making the decision whether you send the job out to a body shop or you buy the bits from us and you tackle it yourself, then you'll know exactly what's involved. And obviously if you do take the side panels off, then it's really dead simple to glue the carpet on the side panel and put the side panel back on again. So I would advise that you do that. It appears that you're going backward a little bit, but I think you'll find the experience is quite beneficial. You've got to take the scuttle off anyway. Remember, if you go on the path of deciding that in the future you're going to possibly do repairs yourself, it is attractive to do your own repairs, because with a Robin Hood we were talking about, apart from the bonnet at £160, that everything else is like under £100. So at today's prices, the nose cones are £75, the headlamps are £45, a new wheel is £65, The suspension arms are not very expensive at all. The manifold could be expensive. You could be into perhaps a couple £100 for a manifold one day. The windscreen assembly, the glass is only £25. But we'd be charging around about £75 for a side panel. So it means you could have quite a good dig in the side, and you'd be into £75 for a side panel, £45 for a new cycle wing, and £75, £80, £90 for a back wing. So it needn't cost you very much to repair. But where I'm coming from is that when you do put the panel back, it might be a good idea to slot those holes that the scuttle goes through. So if you were to slot those holes, all you need to do is to undo those self-tapping bolts that go into the tube, undo those, and then you just lift the panel off. So all that was because I was suggesting that you take the panels off to put the carpet on the inside. Remember again that when you're completing this car for the SVA test, that you bear in mind that the most important thing is to get the car through the test. If you get the car through the test, then you can really, you are 7/8 of the way there. You can take your time and finish the car off at leisure. So just as I said before, remember, don't fit the windscreen, don't fit the wipers, don't fit the washer jet, don't fit the heaters. With the holes that's in the scuttle, all you need to do is put some sticky tape over the top of them, some masking tape, and then just spread some of that cheap silicone sealer from underneath. Let it cure for a few days, and then peel the paper off the top, and it'll look quite neat. You'll see there's just black indications where the holes were or are or have been. Then in the future, if you want to get that off, it's quite easy to peel off. So don't fit the windscreen. Don't fit even your spare wheel, because unfortunately the spare wheel, once it's on the back of the car, it's not counted as a wheel, and any sharp edges on it would you'd be penalised for. So don't fit the spare wheel, don't fit the spare wheel fixing brackets. I've already said about fitting accessories, don't fit any accessories whatever you do. Remember that if you question the louvers on either the bonnet or the heat protector, then they have the status of a grille. So say that yes, they're a grille, and then there's entirely different regulations for grills, and you'll find that that will get you out of trouble with that. Again, for the SVA test, everything's got to be clipped up. All the wires have got to be clipped up tidily. You'll definitely want some nice fixings down here to keep that in place, and just go mad with the cable ties. Anything that's suspect, just cable tie it up together. You can't really have too many cable ties in the engine compartment, particularly with the wires. Make sure there's nothing in the way for any of the wires. On the same subject for the SVA test, when you fill your form in that the front weight is 450 kilograms and the rear is 600 kilograms, remember that the train weight isn't applicable, and at the moment they're trying to get you to admit that you've been out in the car and you've been speeding in it. As far as you're concerned, 70 miles an hour is the maximum speed of the car. There isn't any provision in this country to talk to any more than that. We haven't been out and gone any faster than that in it. So that's it, it's 70 miles an hour. You must tell them that. On the same subject, it's a good idea to get them to MOT the car at the same time as to give the SVA test. You may need that certificate for other things, and also we've also said in the past it may be a good idea prior to the SVA test, you run along to your local MOT station with a matter of spending £30, you ask them to do an MOT on it, and then they'll highlight any areas that's going to be problematic, the emissions or anything they find that would fail an MOT, because really an MOT is kind of halfway, 2/3, 3/4 towards the SVA test. The speedo cable takes a natural route. It comes out the gearbox, it goes across the floor under your feet, and then it loops up. It's quite long, very supple, and it loops up and goes up behind the dashboard. The side indicators, the little oblong lamps, they'll go here. So we could say that from the bonnet or from the front of the suspension brackets, headlamp brackets, they're going to be about 18 inches along the panel, 2 inches from the top, be careful when you drill because there's a tube behind there. They're going to fit on the side there. That hasn't been altogether official yet from the SVA test, but they seem to be passing without any problem just there. As we come to the back of the car again, just oh yeah, okay, very good. As we come to the back of the car again, and we talk again about the SVA test, remember that you're going to put some of that snap-on trim around those holes to finish those off. And you're going to fix this on with small screws, or possibly even put it on a silicone sealer. When we come to the door that fits on here, the lid, then I'm happy that that will be okay for the SVA test, providing that you only assemble it temporarily and put a membrane in between the two back sheets where the holes are. So just put a plastic, a thin plastic sheet in between the two metals, so you haven't got a sharp hole, and probably glue it together, and that would get around that problem of the holes having sharp edges. And then you will need to put the snap-on finisher around it. So I think that will get you out of trouble for the SVA test. We're now looking at the hood frame. Already you've seen some old footage of the hood. So I think we saw Carl on there, he's now left us. So we've now got the hood frame in just about in the form that you get it. We've just untaped the two brackets, and that will sit on top of the luggage compartment lid like that. And it should just sit just slightly in from the edge, and it looks like it does. It sits in about half an inch from the edge both sides. And obviously at the back you've got the lid, so you've got to be a bit sympathetic how the lid will open. But basically it sits on there, and it will sit on there permanently whilst it isn't direct. And the point is, if we could just come round here, camera person, just to recap, that we drill through that and through that, and we put a pivot bolt through there, and then we drill again at the end of that like that, and we need to put that piece of 1/8 thick 1.5 inch wide strip down there to act as a pivot, as a hinge, and we're going to put it on the inside. So what it means is that just here we'll need to cut a slot in that plastic there for that strip to go through. So we'll neatly have to take a slot out of that for the plastic to go through, for the strip to go through. Because, as you know, this hinges the main frame hinges forward and the smaller frame hinges back. So if we lift this off carefully, like so, then we know that we've trimmed that off neatly. And then when we actually lift this off, then you'll remember that if I just hold the pen there like that and put it down, you can see that we've already got that strip just there like that. So it means, the hole. So it means we're going to have to cut that hole bigger, and there is a substantial tube in there that will fasten the small stanchion bracket onto to fix the hood on. So it looks like it's fallen perfectly. So as I see it, you would be taking this off, this panel, this small crescent shaped panel off, and you'd be cutting it a little bit bigger like that. And that would be perfect. The stanchion would come up from there, you drill it round the corners off, fasten it onto there with those self-tapping bolts that you've got, and that would be it. That would work out really, really well. We've chosen to make a little cover for the ECU, mainly to stop any water that would run underneath the bonnet and then directly onto the ECU. We've decided to make a cover for it just there, and we've put the chassis number onto the cover. I would have thought that would have been okay. My colleague here says that the chassis number must be attached to the chassis, so it may be a requirement that they want it on the chassis. So I can see that it would be possible to trim back a little bit of that cover there and put it on the chassis just there. Or we can even put it on top of that cover and fasten it with self-tapping screws onto the chassis, but that may be something that you want some clarity on. One of the things I haven't said to you, when we finally finish this car off, that I did give you the option whether you glued the panels on with silicone sealer or not. But what I haven't said you've got to do, you must run silicone sealer around the join of the firewall and the dashboard to the top of the scuttle. So you do need to do that. So that's quite important, and I advise you doing that when it's on and complete. It doesn't mean getting upside down in the area with a sealer gun, but it is important that that seam along there is perforated and it's adrift altogether at the sides, that you silicone seal that with the quality silicone sealer. Right, Walter, jump in. Watch Walter coming down. Right, just wait, Walter, and I'll talk while you start it up. Go back first. Go back as far as you can first, so you can come forward.
But you haven't got anything underneath the back. And stop laughing.
Are you there? Okay, look away, don't look at the camera. What are you laughing at?
Carry on.
Switch on.
Carry on.
Walter, instead of sitting there looking stupid, start it up and just come towards Gina. How's it feel? All right? Good. That's it. Good job. We're going backwards. The previous footage of the video didn't mention the front fixing for the hood, and I do believe in your hood there is a suggestion where you should put all the fasteners as there's a small hole punched in it. So here we have 9 fasteners on the front of this windscreen. You may have less on your hoods, but in any event these button fasteners can be supplemented with more if you need to keep the weather out more at the front of the car. I think this is an area where when you've got heavy driving rain and you're doing high speeds, that it does creep up the screen and inside, so you know, a few more fixings on the front might not go amiss. But anyway, you'll have to put the screws, the fasteners on as sympathetic as you can, and you do obviously have to drill the frame, so it may be a good idea to put a restrictor on your drill. So if you've got your electric drill with your 3mm or 3.3mm bit in the end, then you need a little bit of something like copper brake pipe to go over the drill, so that you're only exposing the amount of drill that won't encroach onto your glass. And if you look at the windscreen from underneath when you take it off, you'll see that the thickness of the material is around about 4mm. so you want 4mm drill exposed. And it is really important again with these that you do blunt the small screws for the that hold them on. I think it's better to use small screws than pop rivets. I think you might get pop rivets in the faster kit with the hood, but I think I'd sooner see the small screws. Obviously it's really important that you do get your hood square and you measure the windscreen precisely and start off with the middle fixings first. In the kit you did get 3 mirrors, and there's no question that at the base of the windscreen, just forward of the windscreen rubber, is the best place for this mirror to spring back, and they do everything they should do to be correct for the SVA. That is the best place for it. Cosmetically, the best place for the other one is in the exact opposite position. But unfortunately, it isn't the best place as far as seeing what's behind you is concerned, particularly for the SVA test. So I think it's more important that you do get the car through the test than anything else. And we've already said to take the windscreen off. I suggest before you take the windscreen off, you draw around the pillar and you work out the area that is covered up by the pillar and by the snap-on trim, and suggest that that mirror is fitted further backwards on that side, so that you've got one fixing screw going directly underneath where the windscreen is, and the other fixing screw on the very edge of the scuttle, so that you do see better. Obviously when you're sat in the car with a mirror in that position, that unfortunately it's not terrific vision because the pillar gets in your way. That's why you need to bring it forward. So obviously after the test, then you can probably experiment a little bit and try to get a compromise between being able to see and getting it to look right. The answer to it all would be an extension to these arms. So you may decide that yes, you'll put the mirror just there, but you'll put an extension on. They do kind of extensions, you've seen them that caravanners have, so they can see around the back of those caravans. When you're stuck behind a long motorway and small country lanes when you're on your holidays in Cornwall and Devon. I've already probably said to you that it's my preference that the interior mirror is left of centre. So again, sit in the car and make that decision yourself. Warm the screen up, warm the mirror pad up before you stick it on. For the SVA test, you're going to have to make a bracket that comes off the scuttle, again left of centre, so you can see correctly. Whilst the camera is on this car again, we'll look at that is the stainless steel tube that goes over that the track rods, just to tidy it up there, and we've put some electrical cable covering over the end just to finish that off. For the SVA test, unfortunately, you will have to space these flasher lamps out probably 1.5 inches, because whilst they're the correct distance from the edge of the car that the manual states, some SVA testers are measuring the car at the very back where it's wider, and it's really depends how you interpret the regulations, but unfortunately they will have to be moved out for the test. Don't worry if you think you've got 2 left-hand headlamps because they both say left on them. Some people have rang up and said they need a left and a right, not 2 left, but the left indicates that they dip to the left. That's why it says left on them. These little fixing screws there, you'll see that there is a sharp corner on that lamp, even though they are E-marked. Some SVA testers are complaining that there's a sharp corner on that plastic just there that could injure somebody. You do need just to remove with a Stanley knife the very sharp corner there, so it's not sharp, and you could put a little bit of clear silicone sealer in the hole. Remember, any self-tapping screws you've got that's got a recess in them, they could fail it because of the recess of the screw head, but I do think they are splitting hairs at that point. Again, can you see the side flasher lamp I referred to?
Yeah.
That's a side flashing lamp, that's the correct position for it. This windscreen is only held in with self-tapping screws there. You definitely do need to replace those with small 5 or 6 mil nuts and bolts when you know finally where it goes. In the kit you did get 2 wiper arms, and you did get 1 blade that you'll use the 2 sub blades from. We will give you some more information in the future as to the precise adaptation of that system.